A new Gallup poll shows that labor unions have reached their highest approval rate since 1965. 71% of Americans approve of labor unions, up from 68% last year. The increase comes amid high-profile victories for labor unions at companies like Starbucks and Amazon in recent months. But even as approval for unions has increased...
Bro, labor unions have a higher approval rating. It's like triple the approval rating of like Congress, dude. That's insane. And yet, for some reason, people just simply cannot unionize. Yeah, what's going on there? Why do you think that's the case, huh? I found the OG post from the artist. How are people like this real? Wait, what? Pedo Zoo alert? Oh, I've seen that comic before. The comic's actually from Maverick Zarts. The one you see is from the old suspended account. Wait, they came back? How? How did they even come back? Anyway, let's just, come on. We're looking at positive news. We're looking at labor union approval and shit. I don't want to see like fucking weird dog fuckers, dude. Jesus Christ.
Rates have dropped to a historic low. The Bureau of Labor Statistics shows the union membership rate fell to 10.3% last year, about 14 million members. That's down 0.5% from 2020. Professor Sharon Block is the executive director of the Labor and Work-Life Program at Harvard Law School. She is with me now for more. Professor, welcome. Why do you think union membership has fallen despite the rise in approval, especially with companies that many Americans use daily or weekly?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a very stark contrast that we're seeing. We now have a fairly sustained trend line of increase in support among the public for unions, and at the same time, as you said, this declining rate of membership. To me, that says that there's something very wrong with the law that protects people's right to be in a union. There's just no other explanation for why you would see this support, this desire. Many of that 71% also said that they would like to be in a union, but the law is becoming an obstacle to workers being able to make that desire into a reality.
What does falling union membership, even as you rightly point out, despite public support for unions, what does the actual falling membership mean for the economy?
Well, it means that a lot more people who are very vulnerable in this economy. And as we see, especially this coming out of the pandemic, there's a lot of sort of churn in the economy. And, we have a tight labor market now, which sort of gives workers a little bit more leverage, a little bit more ability to go to a different employer. But we also see at the same time the Fed trying to rein that strong labor market in, and workers will be back to being very vulnerable to having to accept unacceptable conditions in their employment. And I think that's why you're seeing this wave of organizing, like at Amazon, at Starbucks, REI, Trader Joe's, lots of different places at this moment where workers feel like they have a little bit more leverage because the unemployment rate is so low. These workers are trying to translate that moment of leverage into something more lasting so that they can be sure, as this uncertain time in the economy sort of settles, that it doesn't settle in a place that says, oh, workers, you have to get paid less, you have to accept less conditions so that we can get through whatever this period that the Fed has said will be painful.
Professor Sharon Block, we hope to continue the conversation another day. In the meantime, thank you for today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Deirdre.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking.
All right. Now we pour one out for the counter-revolutionary that played a role in perhaps one of the greater catastrophes of contemporary history, the dissolution of the USSR, Gorbachev. He died yesterday. Take a look
To our major
at
international.
take a look at how the liberal capitalist Western media is going to cover that death.
National story today, the world is remembering the last leader of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, died at the age of 91. He will be remembered for helping try to end the Cold War and introduce reforms that ultimately led to the breakup of his country, the Soviet state. Liz Palmer, who was a CBS News correspondent in Moscow and interviewed Gorbachev, looks back now at his place in history.
Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev set out to reform the Soviet Union, and he ended up changing the world.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
In the end, the East Germans tore down the wall for themselves, but Gorbachev didn't stop them. And that was the beginning of the end of the Cold War. Born into a farming family in the Soviet Union in 1931, Gorbachev went to Moscow to study law and joined the Communist Party. In the 1980s, as the youngest ever Secretary General of the party, he set out to reform an inflexible, inefficient Soviet system. He engaged with the U.S. and in 1987 signed a momentous nuclear reduction treaty.
Mr. General Secretary, though my pronunciation may give you difficulty, the maxim is dovyai no provyai, trust but verify.
In 1990, Gorbachev won the Nobel Peace Prize, but his economic reforms weren't working, and Soviet citizens were going hungry and getting angry. In 1991, hardliners organized a coup against him. Gorbachev did survive, but the Soviet Union didn't, and he had to watch its collapse from the sidelines. 20 years ago, as the Moscow correspondent, I interviewed Gorbachev. Still the optimist, thinking Putin and the U.S. could be constructive partners.
The age of empires is in the past. Both sides won the Cold War because we ended it.
And I've been thinking this.
Totally. How beneficial and fortuitous that was for the Russian people and like everyone living in the Soviet bloc. Also, if you don't like Vladimir Putin, that ugly fuck is directly responsible on top of course, the
So do you have
American empire and Western liberal capitalists.
What changed you? You grew up in an atmosphere of communism. Your grandfather was a famed communist. Your people were very involved in the communist movement. You grew up in a traditional Russian household. What changed Mikhail Gorbachev? What made you able to turn a place that didn't have freedom into freedom? What did it to you?
Well, life changed us. Efforts, attempts to reform the country, to reform our society, were made several times after Stalin's death, because what we inherited after Stalin, a totalitarian regime, repressions, the domination of one party, of one ideology, the suppression of freedom, that did not give our society, our country, enough fresh air, and therefore the country was suffocating and it needed second wind. And therefore every people who were concerned about our country tried to do something. They wanted to try some reforms. Khrushchev tried it, Kosygin tried an economic reform, but all of those were defeated because the nomenclatura always acted in a way to prevent reforms from succeeding. So we had to give a lot of thought to to how we safeguard reforms. And I understood when I thought about that. Initially, of course, I acted during the first years of reforms, I acted just like my predecessors, mostly focusing on economic reforms, on industry, agriculture, etc. But then we saw that when we really wanted to push the reforms forward, the system, the nomenclature began to resist, began to sabotage that process. And not just the party nomenclature, but also the management nomenclature. And I decided, I concluded as a result of that, that we would lose, just like the previous reformers, like Kosygin and Khrushchev, if we don't implement democratic changes, if we don't have free elections.
But you decided to do what they didn't do. You took them on. You didn't have to take them on. You could have lived the life of a typical Soviet president. Why did you take them on?
Well, no. This, I think, would be someone other than Gorbachev if I did not take them on. My experience, my convictions, my education, my pain and my feeling about my country and my people, all of this was growing on me. And over the years, I became angry. I became unhappy about what was happening in the country, how we were treating our people, our citizens. And for me, initially it was some unhappiness, but then it became real.
And then they told me, you put cheese inside the crust. And said, you can't out-pizza the Hut. And I said to myself, maybe you are right. I will give this a try. I have never seen in all my years cheese inside the crust. Only cheese on top, not inside. This was a very special pizza.
Really an opinion, a view. But initially I thought that the system could be improved, and I began by trying to improve the existing system. And then I thought that we have to change the system, to replace the system. It cannot be improved.
Was it difficult to open doors to the United States? Because you had to be raised with feelings about the United States like we were raised with feelings about the Soviets. Was that hard to open that door?
Very difficult. I think maybe that was the hardest thing. And if we, in moving from Geneva to Reykjavik to Washington to Moscow, in trying to understand the positions of each other, in studying each other, if we had not believed each other, then I think if we had not established human rapport, then we wouldn't have been able, I think, to develop real cooperation, real work together. It was hard. When President Reagan and I first began to talk, we were together, just like you and I today, at a small table, and President Reagan began to accuse me, human rights violations. He said, you have no democracy. He said, you need to make these changes in foreign policies and these changes, etc., etc. And my answer when our dialogue began to go that way was, Mr. President, you are not a prosecutor and I'm not an accused. Let us not lecture each other. We represent big countries. Let us speak as equals. I think that then we will be able to find.
I mean, even if you don't know anything, the immediate red flag should be that, I mean, he was handed a awful predicament regardless, if I'm going to be as charitable as possible. And his actions, some may say, would have happened regardless, no matter what, caused, as Dave Legg, third end, or Dave Legend is correctly pointing out, caused millions of deaths of despair, child prostitution, hunger, deprivation. Russia's GDP dropped by 40%, real wages halved, poverty ballooned from 2.2 million in 1987 and 88 to 66 million in 1993 to 95. Millions died under the brutal regime of privatization and shock therapy. 500,000 women were trafficked into sexual slavery. Does Gorbachev have hold sole responsibility? Of course not. It was just a feeble culmination of a revisionist current in Soviet governance that made increasing accommodation to capitalist interests, but he presided over the final capitulation, and that is his weight to bear. Does Gorbachev bear the primary responsibility? No. Since the 1950s, the USSR faced a vicious adversary whose policy was to enormously increase the strains on Soviet governance to promote tendencies which must eventually find their outlet in the breakup of Soviet power. For a nation that had not known a moment of peace in its short existence, that was passed like a hockey puck from Wilhelmian Germany to the Entente powers, Nazi Germany to the U.S., there could be no space for the kind of naive concessions that Gorbachev made to the West. Yes. The biggest things you could fault him for were not bandaging the dissolution of the USSR a little bit better. It was slated to fall apart regardless, no matter what happens, because the American capitalist power, as a consequence of going back to post-World War II, like in the immediate aftermath of World War II, America's proximity to the war and lack of human capital that they lost in comparison to the USSR in the aftermath of World War II created an environment where America could immediately turn their crosshairs to the real enemy, communism, right? Very quickly. They were able to, in almost a way that Nazis wanted to also, finish the job that the Nazis wanted to start, which was the end of communism, the end of trade unionists, the end of socialists, the end of communists. America was able to literally end the Nazi regime and then take matters in their own fucking hands in a more tolerant, liberal, capitalist approach. Because fascism ultimately is a mechanism of power. It's a mechanism of control. And fascism was utilized by capital owners, both in Germany and elsewhere, to control and suppress the growing communist movements that were happening all around the post-industrial revolution world, right? So America was delivering its final blows to the crumbling, I guess, if you want to call it the empire, right? Or the crumbling hegemonic power. They, no matter who was in charge, it was slated to end. I think we were fucked over either way. The USSR crashing was just a matter of time, but the transition from it to the new order couldn't have been done by worse people. Exactly. I think the worst part is like who the criminals were, who the criminal elements were, and how they sacked this otherwise bountiful state. There's a reason why, GDP was halved. There's a reason why there were millions of child prostitutes, people selling themselves into sex slavery, and so many deaths of despair. And that is because that transitional period was basically given fully to some of the worst criminals, backed by Western banks. That's also the reason why Russia is seen as this kleptocratic capitalist safe haven, this authoritarian kleptocratic capitalist safe haven. Vladimir Putin is very much a reaction to that original transition and that humiliation, and also the dire economic conditions that people were subjected to. Vladimir Putin rose from the ashes of that horrifying transition and was able to quickly rise into power. He came from that background. He was our guy. Okay? Xi Jinping on the collapse of Soviet states. Well, I know what his take is. His take is that they did not uphold the immortal Marxist-Leninist values. They were revisionist. Why did the Soviet Union disintegrate? Why did the Communist Party of the Soviet Union fall into pieces? An important reason is that in the ideological domain, competition is fierce. To completely repudiate the historical experience of the Soviet Union, to repudiate the history of the CPSU, to repudiate Lenin, to repudiate Stalin, was to wreak chaos in Soviet ideology and engage in historical nihilism. It caused party organizations at all levels to have barely any function whatsoever. It robbed the party of its leadership, of the military. In the end, the CPSU, as great a party as it was, scattered like a flock of frightened beasts. The Soviet Union, as great a country as it was, it's literally saying that they did not uphold like Stalinist principles, Marxist-Leninist principles. They were revisionist, and that's why it happened. Meanwhile, the irony is that China has never been in a more fortuitous position as a consequence, a direct consequence of revisionism and Dengist values. So the irony there is not lost on me. Perhaps one of the most successful examples, if you consider China to be a genuine transitional socialist state. Some people don't think it is. Some people do think it is. I don't think it's a legitimate transitional socialist state either. That was only maintained, and China could get to that point specifically as a consequence of Dengist attitudes. So in the end, the CPSU is a great party as it was, scattered like a flock of frightened beasts. The Soviet Union, as great a country as it was, shattered into a dozen pieces. This is a lesson from the past. Terrible take and misunderstanding of modern Marxist-Leninism. Telling me that it's a terrible take? Mao was saying that the Soviet Union dissolved and was picked apart by capitalist vultures because they did not uphold true Marxist-Leninist principles. They did not have ideological purity. They did not... Dang, not Mao. Oh, wait, what the fuck? Oh, this is Xi Jinping who said this. Yeah, what? Oh, fuck my... what am I saying? Sorry. Xi Jinping. Have I been saying Mao this entire time? I apologize. Xi Jinping said this, which is ironic, like I said. You said it once. Oh, okay. Ironic considering that the contemporary Chinese Communist Party is, again, literally at the seeing the successes that it's seen, specifically as a consequence of their application of revisionist Marxist-Leninist principles.
Well, Politico
What is this USA attitude? Jeffrey Sachs is like the number one. Oh shit! Jeffrey Sachs is the number. Wait, hold on. There might be like shitty. I don't know if we can watch this. Hold on. This is the number one Ukraine guy. Hold on. I'm gonna look through it real quick. But I don't know is this about Ukraine? I don't want to watch this. The number one Ukraine guy. It's about the fall of the USSR. Mao said this too. Mao said it too, chat. Yeah, by the way, this what Xi Jinping is saying is nearly identical to original Sino-Soviet split and what Mao had to say as well on revisionist Russia. So there are a lot of similarities within what he's saying. I mean, what are they supposed to do? USSR and China both have to compete with the West in order to survive. Also, she often talks about the Dengue steps in using productive force to counter the West. Yeah, I know. I'm saying, like, he's talking about ideological revisionism while he himself is like the main guy who did it, or not the main guy, but he himself is doing it currently. Anyway, there was high levels of corruption. Here's Warger. There was high levels of corruption that had developed in the USSR by the time Gorbachev took power. What people never considered that at that point reform was necessary. At the end, it was the hardliners who did the push and forced them to either choose to basically start a civil war or resign. I think ultimately he had his heart in the right place. I don't know. No matter what happens, he oversaw the death and destruction of so many people. That's because Xi doesn't reject China's foundation Mao like the USSR did with Stalin. Yeah, that's a good one. That's what happened. It's because they bit the hand that fed them. They de-Stalinized, and that's why it happened, right? That's the main reason, right, dude? Certainly, that's the reason for China's success. The reason for China's success is because they still maintain a tremendous amount of pride for Mao, whereas the USSR engaged in revisionism and also simultaneously engaged in de-Stalinization. I mean, you could make an argument about de-Stalinization as a concession, as a starting point for concessions to the West. But de-Stalinization in and of itself is not necessarily a bad issue, especially considering, as Warger also correctly pointed out, corruption being a insanely awful force that legitimately was harming the country's own mechanisms of government. CoinTelPro, thank you for the 10 get the subs. Motorface, thank you for the 5 get the subs.
Find keys to any problem. So it was difficult. But still, it became possible. Without changes in Soviet-American relations, nothing would have changed in the world.
Yeah. Champaign, Illinois for Mikhail Gorbachev on this special edition of Larry King Weekend. Hello.
Hi, Larry.
Hi.
President Gorbachev, I'm honored to talk to you.
Dude, America's such a wild country. They would just have like any random guy from Champaign, Illinois call into Larry King to talk to fucking Gorbachev. That's a crazy thing. That's how fucking dominant America is, dude. Like, can you imagine Barack Obama talking on the phone to some fucking random Russian guy on a Russian televised broadcast? No shot. This is like ritualistic humiliation.
Do you believe that communism as a political philosophy and a system has still something to offer to the world?
I think that in principle, as a system, as a philosophy, as a model of organizing a society, of reforming society, has to be rejected based on our experience, the experience of our country and of Eastern European countries. As regards the use of certain methods to achieve greater social justice, greater regulation by the state of certain social processes. There were certain useful aspects that could be used in the future as well. That's why I'm speaking of socialist values. By the way, I believe also that socialists who are in power in some countries they also use liberal theories, not just socialist theories. It's not really a choice of capitalism versus socialism. I believe that based on our experience and on the Western experience, Western values and other values, we have to conclude that what we need is a new society, a new civilization that would take advantage of all that is best and would reject all that is worst and take advantage of the good things for the new civilization together. So let us not just try to stamp out everything. We have to reject what did not work.
Let me get a break and come
in
back.
our country.
Let's go back to your calls. Rotterdam, Holland. Hello.
Oh, hi, Larry.
Hi.
My question is, if Mr. Gorbachev had known that perestroika would lead to the disintegration of the Soviet Union, would...
Wait. Why is everybody calling from like random... Wait, what? Rotterdam, Holland? Also, even the guy from fucking Champaign, Illinois. That motherfucker had an accent too.
Would you still have supported it the way he did?
No, I don't think that this was our plan, and it was not fatalistically inevitable. I think that it could have been avoided. The collapse of the breakup of the Soviet Union could have been avoided. I believe it was one of my big mistakes that I was not able to explain my policies, to conduct the kind of policies, more vigorous policies that would have made it impossible for the coup plotters in 1991 to have that coup that made it impossible to sign the new Union Treaty. We had the treaty, we had even the scenario of how we will be signing the treaty, where we will be sitting and how we would be signing the treaty, and that treaty would have opened, I think, a very fruitful chapter in a new federation, in a new country. It would have been a real federation rather than the unitary state that we used to have, a totalitarian state.
Last call quickly. Edmonton, Canada, quickly. Hello.
Mr. Gorbachev, how would you like history to judge you?
We only have 30 seconds. How would you like history to judge you? What should it say?
Well, this is for history. This is history's privilege. History is a capricious lady, but I hope that it will judge me fairly.
I have no doubt it will.
Responding to the chatter before, Stalin literally killed or gulagged most of the revolutionaries and actual ideologues in the USSR and left it with a bunch of dumb, sycophantic careerist bureaucrats. He literally contributed indirectly to the current contribution. What do you mean indirectly? He contributed directly to the corruption that ate apart the country, making it so that, like, de-Stalinization, aside from what it meant, what it came across as like concessions to the West, de-Stalinization became a necessity. Like, he was, you know, I'm not one of those people that's like, look, I can see the good in Stalin, okay? Killing a lot of Nazis, very cool. I'm on board with that. You know what I mean? That's very, very cool. Genuinely. Okay? But, I mean, let's be real. He wasn't exactly great. And saying how U.S. propaganda through Radio Free Europe, etc., convinced a lot of younger Soviet elites in Gorbachev's generation that the West truly was benevolent. Gorby gave up the USSR and Russian security for nothing and trusted the West's goodwill and promises that they wouldn't expand NATO. Yeah, that was a big mistake. And also totally didn't work, so. Muscovites react to the passing of Mikhail Gorbachev. These Moscow residents reacted to the news of Mikhail Gorbachev's passing with a sense that he did more harm than good by precipitating the breakup of the Soviet Union. Yeah, of course they are going to say that. It seemed to set us back then that he was a person who could change the Soviet Union for the better. It seemed to us back then. But then, when it was coming to an end, it turned out that he is a person who broke up the Soviet Union, broke up a vast country. There's two reasons why this is going to always be the fucking answer. One, there's nationalistic pride of being a competitive hegemonic power. And losing that is going to be the immediate reason as to why so many people are going to be anti-Gorbachev, because they're seeing him as the reason. The second is a more legitimate reason, which is economic concessions and political concessions afforded to the West that completely were undermined, taken advantage of right off the fucking jump, and have led to Russia becoming the state that it is.
Который привел к огромным многочисленным войнам, разноусобицам бывших советских республик, между народами Советского Союза. И поэтому сейчас о нем у меня не очень хорошее мнение о его жизненном пути и о его результатах.
Ну, то, что Союз развалился, я считаю плохо. Союз надо было, СССР, не разваливать, его надо было, ну, если сравнивать с самолетом или с автомобилем, модернизировать, убрать наносное лишнее к тому периоду, что мешало. Ну, мое вот мнение такое, да. Ну, попал он в историю как человек, пытавшийся изменить страну, даже мир, может быть, в чем-то.
Отрицательно отношусь к времени правления Михаила Горбачева. Он сделал много вредного для нашей страны. Мы теперь расхлебываемся.
Oh, Jesus Christ, that was good. Good sneeze. You know there were countries other than Russia and the USSR, any interest in their opinions? Yes, dude. They say it sucked. Okay, I got it. Yeah, especially ones that got better deals from the West, which had a legitimate interest in, like, you know, propping up anything and everything that could be utilized as an anti-socialist weapon. Luckily, at least a lot of those countries in the Eastern Bloc still have incredible percentages of individual home ownership. So that's pretty cool. Fun fact, look up individual home ownership rates in countries that are former Soviet bloc countries. Just a fun fact, just to figure out, like, where things are, or at least what remnants of socialism these countries still benefit from, while simultaneously having an anti-USSR perspective, which is understandable. Yeah. Yeah, like Topji's very own Romania that he went to has, like, individual home ownership rates up to 90%. Almost 90%. You think that's an accident? You think that happened on accident? You think capitalism is the reason for that? Is that why? It happened because of socialism. Honestly, I get a bit angry at those motherfuckers in ex-Soviet countries. They don't know how bad it is to be in the U.S.'s backyard instead of at the USSR's. At least they have houses and healthcare. Look at us in Latin America. Well, Latin America was also never, like, an actual legitimate... Latin America was not under the umbrella of the United States of America, though. Latin American countries. That's another reason why they were fucking awful in their dealings. Yeah, look at that. Home ownership rate in Romania is 96.1%. Hungary, 91%. Slovakia, 90.9%. Laos, 95.9%. Cuba, 90%. Vietnam, 90%. North Macedonia, 90%. Croatia, 89.7%. China, 89.68%. Why do you think that's like that? That's so strange, dude. Where the fuck is America in this? I want to see. Huh. Wait, you mean to tell me China has like 80%, 90% home ownership rate? But wait, hold on. What is this? Hong Kong has 22.1%? That's so weird. I wonder if there's a through line in all of this. I'm just trying to figure out, like, what could it be? I can't figure it out for the life of me. Can someone describe what the difference is? I wonder. I just don't know. I don't know what it is. Colonialism, perhaps? Not just colonialism, but colonialism and its remnants. Maybe Hong Kong doesn't have enough grind set. That's crazy. You'd need to have two entirely different systems for that to happen, even if they were one state. Just an odd thing I noticed right there. United States, 65.5%, by the way, home ownership. They don't have enough space, so it's a lot of apartment buildings. Oh, that's really interesting. Because, you know, famously in China, apartment buildings don't exist. Or, population density isn't super high in cities in China, whereas it is in Hong Kong. That's right. I never would have thought about that. Also, you can't famously own an apartment in your own building, and that would be a part of the home ownership rate. No, bro, that just means what percentage are fucking landlords, okay? What do you think? Like, you think every Romanian owns like a fucking homestead? Or do you think they own their apartments? Yeah, Singapore's another great example, famously. Holy shit, Hassan, you're being really dense. Hong Kong is literally just a city. They don't have vast rural lands. Bro, you're being ridiculous. It's owner-occupied units, the total residential units. Hong Kong has, by the way, a fucking incomprehensible housing crisis. Like, just unimaginable, okay? Same with South Korea, which I'm surprised. Where is the... Oh, nope, that's not surprising, 56.8%. The only number that's actually surprising here is Austria, okay? Austria, where Vienna is 65% publicly owned housing units. Like 65% of the housing in I think Vienna, if not Austria in its entirety, is supposed to be owned by the government. That is the actual fucking surprising part of this. Red Vienna having a 55% home ownership, owner-occupied units. Unless they're designating like publicly owned housing to be something different. Hong Kong does not have rural areas like fishing villages and shit, of course. You guys are so fucking stupid, dude. You're literally refusing to comprehend the main reason. Then Singapore would be the same, okay? No, the main reason is because these are fucking... They have... The way that people see housing is entirely different in different countries and in different economic systems. Shut the fuck up. Obviously, the 20% of people that live in rural China make up 400% of China's homeowners. Yeah. Only about half those 65% are actually government-owned in Vienna. The rest is basically co-ops called Genossenschaften. Wait, really? The irony is, like, people don't understand that half of the fucking houses that we're looking at in, like, places like in former Soviet nations in Eastern Europe are literally apartment blocks that were government owned. They're not individual houses, you fucking weirdos. They're the ugly ass brown and gray ass apartment blocks that you know as government housing. That's what the fuck it is. So it's not like, I know that in America, you literally personally think like the only home ownership is when you own a fucking fat house with a white picket fence, but that's not how it works. What do you mean? Not 80% of Hong Kong's population is homeless? No, dude. But 80% of Hong Kong's population is renting. That's what that means. Only 22% of Hong Kong's entire population owns their own homes. The rest is renting. Do you not get that? And for that reason, by the way, for that reason, Hong Kong has a gigantic problem, so does South Korea, with homelessness. In South Korea, didn't they recently make those basement apartments illegal because of flooding? Like in the movie Parasite? Am I wrong about this? Didn't that just happen? Of course, another way to like lower the number of available units, which is, by the way, a provision that you have to take, for the record, because otherwise people are dying in their fucking apartments when flooding happens. However, instead of increasing the housing supply and finding government-owned housing or other alternatives to housing, they're just, continuing along and trying to offer patchwork solutions. Inside of Hong Kong's cage homes is the neoliberal
It's more expensive
solution.
to live in Hong Kong than anywhere in the world.
Let's take a look at
Hong Kong has been.
Let's take a look at the neoliberal solution to Hong Kong's housing crisis, which I talked about already. By the way, these are places like, even if you have a culture of taking care of your old people, these are places where old people are just like destined to die. They're just left alone, destined to die. They're no longer productive workers. They don't have enough money to fucking pay for the insane skyrocketing housing. They just fucking leave them.
Ranked the least affordable housing market in the world 8 years in a row.
That video is from 2018. Yeah, when Hong Kong was, not a part of the gross and disgusting authoritarian Chinese state, of course. So I'm sure that they're going to have a better, more adequate solution, right? Because neoliberal capitalism has a really great solution to housing.
And by a long shot. Housing prices are now almost 20 times more than annual income. That means that a household making $50,000 US would, on average, be looking for a house that costs $980,000. And it's getting really bad. Hundreds of thousands of residents now squeeze into incredibly small apartments, most of them no bigger than a parking space.
So these are cage homes, which basically fit one person and their belongings, and they basically stack these in a room in order to fit as many people as they can in the room.
And yet the price per square foot for these smaller houses just keeps shooting up.
I don't understand. What's the problem? I see no issue with this. This is a perfectly amicable solution to the housing market crisis. It's just so silly.
I visited these homes.
It's called the free market, you fucking cuck. Have you heard of it? Have you taken an econ course? You would understand if you had.
To try to piece together an explanation for this trend, and to meet the people who are being squeezed by the world's least affordable real estate market.
Look to your future, Americans. Even if you're living in fucking Austin, you little shits in Texas. Oh, we have so much land out here. We're doing great. We're doing fine. Look to your fucking future. Any city Any city that you live in the United States of America is going to look like this inevitably. This is the urbanist dream, by the way. I just realized this is like the YIMBY urbanist dream, okay? Literally, it's just like I don't understand. There's no issue with this. I did a similar thing in my neo-feudalist San Francisco commune that I worked at. I don't understand. This is just it's called co-living. There's no problem with this. You're so stupid for. Oh, what? Why half the scientists in some Eastern European countries are women? Stop. Listen. It seems like you're making a lot of propaganda here, okay? And this is undermining what I've learned, okay? This is undermining what I've learned about International Women's Day, for example, or you know, Soviet era protocols. You're fucking. I don't like this. Let's watch this. Let's keep watching.
Tens of thousands of people in this city.
I don't remember you hating on YIMBYs. I guess you're just another landlord tyrant now. No, motherfucker. I talk about increasing the housing supply all the goddamn time. I literally talked about it on this broadcast like numerous times. Shut the fuck up. Suck my cock.
Who live in spaces that are between 75 and 100.
YIMBYs are the fucking YIMBY urbanists are the fucking vegans of the housing crisis world, okay?
140 square feet. For some perspective,
they can't shut the fuck up.
Space in the US is 120 square feet.
所以好困難，始終呢度係黑暗嘅，即係一入嚟到見唔到光㗎嘛。
One of the most common strategies for small space living is this subdivided house model. This big space that's been divided up into a bunch of tiny little living spaces. These people basically have room for a bed and a table and a few belongings.
有啲就條理，有啲就求求其其咁樣。嗰啲唱 K 啊嗰啲啦，同埋啲水啊嗰啲藥品啊，好簡單嘅。
What makes this model work is that they have a bigger communal space where they're able to have their cooking and their washing in the bathroom open to everyone so that they can save space and save money in their actual living quarters.
Bro, the moment that we look at Hong Kong's cage homes, everyone in the chat is like, China is denying the Uyghur genocide still. It's like, bro, what does that have to do with this right now? Like, you can't just literally look at the same exact problem that exists in your fucking backyard right now, the same exact problem that impacts you, a capitalist commodified attitude towards home ownership directly causing this problem, without turning around and be like, well, they're doing Uyghur genocide. What do you mean? Just have you what? Hello? What the fuck? It's so weird. Just study why you are reflexively hitting that note. Okay? Just think about it. Just think about why.
So this is the kitchen for this space, which is shared by 4 families.
因為每個人生活習慣唔一樣咯，成日都因為好少個事都會有摩擦咯，唔 OK 咯，即係好多嘈交咯。
The tempting explanation here for why the prices are so high is land scarcity. You know, 7.5 million people crammed into this series of islands. It's going to drive up the prices. It's the same story in a lot of places that have run out of land that are in high demand. Think San Francisco or New York City. Okay, this might be the story in New York City and San Francisco, but is Hong Kong actually running out of land? Let's see what the drone says about this.
Flying over Hong Kong, you start to see that while yes, there's a very dense urban landscape, there's also a whole lot of green space. Government land use data says that 75% of the land in Hong Kong is not developed. Now, some of that is mountainous and rocky and not easy to build on, but certainly not all of it. So
I wonder if there was any sort of like interest in maintaining that undeveloped land undeveloped so that housing, so that the 22%, like anyone outside of the 22% that owns all the fucking real estate would benefit from that. If there was any like reason why someone would benefit from maintaining the housing market in the way that it is, and you know, forcing artificial scarcity. It's just weird. I don't know. I don't know what it could be.
I posed this question about density to two experts. One is a Hong Kong citizen and the other is a 30-plus year resident. Both are advocates for better urban design.
Are high prices primarily the result of land scarcity?
No.
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 It's not. Okay. So there's a land use issue. We could also land as being inefficiently used or conserved.
The problem isn't a shortage of land. The problem is bad land management.
Land use, land management. What these experts are referring to is that of all the land in Hong Kong, only 3.7% is zoned for urban housing. But it's not because of mountains, it's because of policy. And this gets to the heart of the explanation of why more and more people are living in homes the size of parking spaces.
The first thing to note, if you want to understand the real explanation, is that the government owns all of the land in Hong Kong. Well, all except for this one church that the British built here when they ruled it back in the 1800s, and it kind of just escaped the whole government owns all the land thing.
So the government owns all the land, and it leases it out to developers, usually for 50 years, in an auction process, where the highest bidder gets the contract. With such scarce and valuable land zoned for housing, real estate companies, more and more of them coming from mainland China with lots of money, will duke it out in these auctions, and will end up at an astronomically high price.
Like this plot of land that was just leased out for $2.2 billion. Which set an all-time record for the most expensive land ever leased by the Hong Kong government to a developer.
So the way that government zones and leases land is the first part of this.
The other part of this explanation has a lot to do with taxes. If you're the type of person who navigates away from this video when you hear the word tax policy, stay with me here. This place loves low taxes. It's a great place to do business.
Yeah, it's so I wonder if there's like any sort of remnants of like who Hong Kong belonged to for, you know, that church. Let's think about that church for a second, and let's think about you know, the British government, what kind of attitude they had, what kind of economic organization of society they believed in. I'm sure this does not factor into the difference between Hong Kong and the rest of mainland China.
Because the corporate tax is low, no value-added tax, no sales tax.
That's right. You fucking nailed it. Irish influence strikes again, even though Ireland is technically used as a tax haven. But
low taxes, that's embedded into the fabric of this place. Look at all those low taxes doing their work, building up those skyscrapers, slapping on those bank logos all over town. So if the government isn't getting revenue from taxes, it really needs it from another source. And in the case of Hong Kong, that source is land sales.
Because a lot of the government revenues here are driven by land revenues.
Please, Hasan, explain it. I don't know why. I'm begging you. Dude, everything I'm saying, just think of the opposite, okay? I'm being sarcastic. Like, I'm already explaining it by saying, I wonder why. He's already describing it to you. Please consider that Chinese companies are the ones that are bidding the lands and refuses to develop it and the harm to Hong Kong people. Dude, that is... Bro, I'm sorry, but that's like next level insanity. What the fuck? Bro, come on, dude. Come on, brother. Jesus Christ. Even when it's directly a byproduct of capitalism and British colonial or British imperialist attitudes, it's still China's fault? Like, what the fuck? That's wild. State-owned apartments in Vienna is rented out to people, so officially it's not owned by the people themselves. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. We'll see what happens. Okay? We'll see what happens in the future. It can continue to go that way. It can continue to go that route. Okay? Certainly. But we're watching a video from 2018. We're also watching a video of a autonomous area that was developed for many, many fucking years completely separately from what you were talking about. Specifically trying to blame China for Hong Kong in this regard is kind of wild. Especially when this is like, this predates the takeover.
And it's about 30% of government public finance.
Especially when the irony is like, this is happening in London. This is happening in Los Angeles. This is probably happening in your city too. And you could turn around and be like, China's doing that too. They're buying a lot of, Chinese nationals are buying a lot of housing. But no emphasis is placed on the local government in this regard. Like, are you fucking insane? Oh man, it's so crazy. It's wild that China is like fucking ruining the housing market. Just like it was wild when China stole all the jobs. You know, because these corporations weren't being operated by individuals. They just stole the jobs at gunpoint. They just came over and put a gun to the fucking temple of every wealthy person and said, hey, you're going to outsource your fucking manufacturing to us. Crazy. It's crazy when China did the 2008 housing market crash. The other day, I stepped on a Lego. That was directly the fault of Xi Jinping. Did you know this? Literally. I stubbed my toe. Xi Jinping. CCP. It's so fucked up and so wild. Top of the hour ad break that comes at the top of the hour, sometimes at 3:20 instead of the top of the hour because I forgot to run it at the top of the hour. Also Xi Jinping. However, subscribing for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime to avoid the top of the hour ad break, not Xi Jinping. That's America, baby. That's capitalism. But that's still the truth. You can avoid the top of the hour ad break by subscribing for $5 or for free. Aha, Türkler geldi. SA. Oh shit, who just fucking raided? Who's raiding me? I gotta run the fucking ad break now, but Türkler tam ad break verirken geldiniz ama korkmayın, siz zaten Türkiye'de olduğunuzu görme ihtimaliniz yok. Anyway, here's the 1 minute ad break now. Oh, Jahrein raided. Jahrein, I hope you had a good stream. Thank you for the fat raid. We're looking at the housing market in Hong Kong.
Financing income.
The government of Hong Kong can lease out this land to develop
Aleyküm selam Türkler.
prices. make a ton of revenue from that, and not have to raise taxes on the people or the corporations that reside here. And they still proudly retain their ranking as the freest economy on earth. What this means is that the Hong Kong government doesn't have a huge incentive to free up more land and lower prices. But while this current arrangement of bidding and auctions is really good for revenue for the government and good for the market generally, it's not super good for the people of Hong Kong.
因為我仔係過度活躍 A 仔嚟㗎嘛，所以空間對於佢嚟講少咗少少，空氣唔流通嘅對我身體都唔好㗎。
Of all the small spaces, this is easily the most cramped. These are coffin homes. Could I ask you just a quick question about your living space?
一個人啫喎，多個人都唔得。呢度一個月咧，呢個位就係2100蚊。
$267 a month for that, dude.
你住得大約年幾兩年啊？香港啲住費都太貴。
The government is slowly working on this problem. Year after year, new policies come in that are meant to fix this, but they're slow to change, mainly because they have an incentive to keep the status quo as it is.
Out here at this industrial complex in Hong Kong, I met with a guy named Eric Wong, a local inventor and businessman who has seen a business opportunity in the midst of this space crisis.
Oh, great.
Eric grew up in Hong Kong and has been thinking about...
Bro, that is psychotic. Dude, what the fuck? What is going on, brother? How do you go, yo, I watched dystopian science fiction flicks when I was growing up and decided I want to be the guy who makes the pods, dude.
About small space living for a long time.
Homie, that's just a coffin. I built my first capsule when I was really young, he says. My family got a new fridge and I carved windows out of the box the fridge came in.
Oh, it has Wi-Fi.
His capsules come in 1 or 2 person sizes and are meant to provide a more efficient and hygienic version of the cage and coffin homes, all at a relatively low price.
Down here, there's a little box where you can put all your valuables. Okay, so there's mirror lights, there's reading lights.
But these capsules, as innovative as they are, really just put a Band-Aid on.
Yo, you know what's really funny is that, I mean, this, like, Americans looking at Hong Kong's dire situation, okay? Going, oh man, that's so crazy. I can't believe the motherfuckers live like this. That's crazy. It must be because of China or whatever. Don't realize that, like, you know, this is coming to your backyard, bro. This is San Francisco's probably like, this is a great idea. We should ship out a bunch of these.
On this housing problem, they don't serve as a real solution. A real solution would need to come from something that's much less profitable and fun to look at. Government policy and zoning reform that will free.
Japan doing this too? Is that also China's fault? Yes. Yes, it's also China that did this, okay? Yes. Somehow. Always. It's communism's fault, probably. Oh no, Suez Canal is down. Navigation stops in Egypt's Suez Canal after ship runs aground. Oh my lord, dude. Here we go again, boys. Here we go again, boys. The sequel.
Free up more land and put the interests of the people above the interests of the market.
This guy says, let's watch a Turkish economy documentary. Oğlum sen manyak mısın? Direktör olarak öldürmek mi istiyorsun Türkleri burada? Zaten yaşıyorlar her gün. Ne dokümenterisi lan? Adam Twitch'e geliyor kaçmak için. Ondan sonra diyorsun ki yok hayır göster Türklere tekrar. Ne kadar yarak yediklerini.
But until the government can make that happen, people in Hong Kong will continue to squeeze into smaller and smaller spaces.
Anyway, okay, so he did at least like admit it. Come on, dude. The Hong Kong protests were largely driven in large part by youth resentment towards unaffordable housing. The CCP controls Hong Kong's LegCo parliament and pretty much backs the same real estate developers that the British did. It's not China's fault, but they largely maintain British colonial structures. It's just the truth. 100%. Let's see what happens. If it continues to be the same exact way, then you're right. That they are, they're engaging in the same exact exploitative structures that the British did.